Dzień dobry,
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the press conference about the Polish presidency of the Council of the European Union. Today we are joined by Adam Szłapka, Minister for European Union Affairs, Magdalena Sobkowiak, Metz, Candidate Secretary of State, and Plenipotentiary of the Minister for European Union Affairs for the preparation duration of the Polish presidency, as well as Ignacy Niemczycki, Secretary of State. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have met in a team that's responsible for preparing the presidency already on January 1st. So it's just 22 days before Poland takes over presidency in the Council of the European Union. I think that in Brussels, as well as all European capitals, everyone is very aware what a difficult time we are facing ahead of us and how many challenges Europe will face. Despite this fact, the Polish presidency is awaited in Brussels and European capitals not with anxiety but with hope. This is, among other things, due to the actions that have been taken in the last few months, in the last year, by the government headed by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, focusing on what's most important from the European perspective, i.e. security. This is best testified by the last meeting that took place in Sweden, where we discussed about security of the Baltic Sea. We are prepared to take over presidency of the Council of the European Union. So chairing the discussions in the Council is the main task of the presidency. But for us, it's also important that Europe speaks our language and notices what's most important. And nothing is more important today than taking responsibility for our joint security. We have to do it in solidarity, but at the same time focusing on what's important. So the motto of our presidency will be security in Europe. Security Europe. We want this motto to mean that we are taking responsibility for our joint security. Our joint security should be the focus of Europe's discussions. We should focus on solving the most important challenges and tasks. And obviously, security is a very broad term. We want to develop it by focusing on 7 dimensions of security. They will be the priorities of our presidency. First and foremost, external security. We will be focusing on strengthening our defense industry and also strengthening our bonds to the United States and common defense initiatives. We want to take responsibility for preparing Europe so that Europe can deter our potential enemies. And of course, it involves as well supporting Ukraine and also includes supporting those countries that are on the way to joining the European Union. And secondly, internal security by preventing illegal migration and preventing instrumentalization of migration and also combating acts of sabotage, terrorism, organized crime. It also includes a solid responding to natural catastrophes in solidarity. We are talking about physical security here, which is especially important to us. And one of its elements is information security. For many years now, Europe has been struggling against huge waves of disinformation. It's an important part of democratic resilience that we want to focus on. The economy is essential, and on the one hand, economic security by strengthening the competitive advantage of Europe and a paradigm shift, moving away from a Europe of overregulation and excessive prohibitions, and moving forward towards investment in new technologies so that the economy can develop and unlock the potential of entrepreneurship. From our point of view, it's also essential so that we can increase the cohesion of Europe. This goes hand in hand with energy security. It's no secret to everyone that from the Polish perspective, energy security is a priority. We want to build a policy that makes energy affordable to companies as well as citizens, because this is also an important measure of our competitive advantage, and we want to release Europe from any dependencies it might have on suppliers that we find inconvenient. security also involves food security. We all realize that food is a strategic product. We need to keep discussing the common agricultural policy so that our agriculture remains competitive and so that citizens in Europe have access to high-quality food. The last dimension is health security. I don't think I have to convince anyone after the pandemic how important joint action on European level is, how important coordination of health-related issues is. And this also goes hand in hand with the security of pharmaceutical supplies and focusing on mental health, especially of the youngest generation. So security is what we will be focusing on. You will hear it in many different sentences throughout our presidency. Today, the Council of Ministers adopted a 6-month plan for our presidency. It addresses the most important challenges we have just discussed. It also describes how we understand our basic priorities in 10 sectoral councils that will be chaired by our ministers during the Polish presidency. And as for the councils and what they would be doing, we will leave it to our ministers who will present the plans during their own press conferences. But what's most important is we are focusing on Europe, speaking about what's most important, security. Every presidency has a logo, and in just a minute I will hand over the microphones to Minister Sobkowiak, the author of the logo. Is a person who also designed the logo. Is Jerzy Janiszewski. He designed the logo of the Solidarność and the logo of the previous presidency. So it's already a tradition. So this is the logo of the Polish presidency of the Council of the European Union in 2025, our second presidency. And for the second time, the logo has been designed by Jerzy Janiszewski, an artist with great experience. He designed, among other things, the logo of the Solidarność and the Polish presidency in 2011. Fewer colors than in 2011, and also the message is slightly different than in 2011, because this logo shows that Poland wants to go back to the path of democracy and the strength of the civic society. And it also speaks of strong Poland in European Union. So next year it will be a history of 21 years of Polish membership in Euro Union. It speaks of solidarity, security and cooperation with the Union under the red and white flag, which is the Polish flag, because Poland will take over a presidency. So this logo will from now on be displayed of all official materials we will publish. But as you all know, Polish presidency in the European Union is a great organizational effort. For the last year, we've been preparing for these 180 days that are ahead of us. And in that time, for half a year, we will welcome about 400,000 people from all Europe who will come to Poland. We will organize throughout the country more than 300 official meetings, but this calendar is by no means full yet. You can still apply for patronage of the Polish presidency and build our official calendar together with us. In Warsaw, there will be 22 meetings of informal council meetings. So it's a high number of informal meetings. Not all presidencies organize as many as that. The core of the presidency, so all officials from the administration that are engaged in the preparation of the presidency, counts as many as 3,000 people. During the preparation, we've trained nearly 4,000 officials. We've organized more than 140 trainings, and more than 100 liaison officers are starting their involvement. They will take care of official delegations visiting Poland. For the next half a year, there will be almost no single day in Poland where we will not have an official meeting connected to the presidency. Not only meetings between officials, but there will be a rich cultural program. It will be inaugurated in National Opera on January 3rd, a great gala for the opening of the presidency. But in a few days, together with Minister Wróblewska, we'll introduce a cultural program in more detail. But remember that the Polish presidency will not be just happening in Warsaw, because events have been planned from Zakopane to Sopot, so all over the country. And I'm very pleased to say that the preparation for the presidency was carried out in a spirit of dialogue. There were two councils, the presidency and an NGO council for the presidency. So together with both councils and the Council of Ministers, we've developed a 6-month program and the priorities of the presidency. And one of the fruit of this collaboration is an idea for a conference that will now introduced by Minister Niemczycki. Thank you very much. I know that especially business has been really looking forward to the announcement of the program. So before I talk about the cross-sectoral conferences, I would like to say a few words about the economic aspect. It is my impression, ladies and gentlemen, that in the last few months, you and us have been discussing about the Draghi report about the competitiveness of the European economy. And from my conversations with business people, I draw one clear conclusion: decarbonization cannot happen through deindustrialization, because if we would do that, we would run the risk of fight against climate change losing public support. So I'm very pleased to hear that the European Commission announced that during the Polish presidency it will announce important proposals for the economic area, for the area of economy. Our presidency wants the European Union to send out a clear signal that Europe needs to regain a strong economic position globally. We want to focus on 3 areas. So first, industrial policy, energy prices, and you all know in Europe energy prices are significantly higher than in the US or China. Also an equal playing field in competition with China and support for energy-intensive sectors. Secondly, simplification of European regulations has been appealed for by the business throughout the continent. Also strengthening the single market, especially in the field of services, which is the third point. I'm not sure you realize. Based on own analysis of the European Commission, we know that 60% of the barriers on the sector of services are the same barriers that used to exist this market 20 years ago. So already in February in Warsaw there will be a meeting of ministers competent for competition and trade in order to really give a strong impetus to the discussion about competition. I want to thank the business as well as different organizations of the civic society for their contribution and to the preparations. The Polish presidency should be open to the participation of society. We want to involve in our work representatives of the civic society, academia or business. And this purpose will be served by our flagship cross-sectoral conferences that will be organized in many Polish cities and at which we will welcome guests from many European countries. It will be a chance for us to show our Polish sensitivities in the crucial areas for us. So each cross-sectoral conference will also address the dimensions of security that Minister Szłapka mentioned. Let me begin by talking about internal security conference organized by the Ministry of Funds and Regional Policies in Krakow in January. European development, which is the best policy for a competitive and safe European Union. Secondly, external security, also very important. In June, we will meet in Gdynia in order to talk about the security situation in the Baltic region. Then information Security National Summit organized by the Ministry of Digitalization in April in Bydgoszcz, where we will be talking about the resilience of society and faced with this information, as well as coordination of the member states in the case of large-scale incidents. And also an issue very close to my heart, economic security, the European Days of Industry in June in Rzeszów. We have selected Rzeszów, and it is not an accident because we want to talk about the participation of Ukraine in single market, but also but first and foremost we want to talk about supply chain security and increasing the capabilities of the European defense industry. Energy security, we are expecting a conference in Silesia in the spring. It will be co-organized by the Ministry of Industry and the Ministry of Climate and Environment. This conference will address issues of energy infrastructure, health security, April, and the city of Krakow, where we want to speak about coordinating our actions in crisis situation, as well as how to ensure access of patients to medicines, so pharmaceutical security. And finally, in June, Warsaw, common agricultural policy for food security of Europe. An important context for this conference will be the planned publication of the Vision for Agriculture document. We want our farmers to have a bright future in Europe, in the European Union, and have the sense that they can ensure, and they are the ones ensuring our food security.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of challenges that Europe is facing now. We are able to tackle these challenges together if we remain united as the European Union and if we take responsibility for tackling these challenges together. So, Security Europe, this is our motto that we are going to keep repeating, and we are prepared to take the presidency of the EU Council. Thank you very much. Thank you. If there are any questions, you are welcome to ask them. There are two people who will be distributing the mic, and the man with the grey jacket is going to be the first one. I represent the German radio. I have a question regarding food. You've mentioned food security a few times. And I would like to ask a question about Mercosur agreement. As we know, that agreement was concluded or signed a few days ago, and Rafał Trzaskowski made a negative comment on this agreement last weekend. So my question is Poland going to make sure that this agreement takes effect, or will Poland be against it? Maybe Poland will be for implementing this agreement in a different form. From the point of view of the European interest, it is crucial that the Polish agriculture and the European agriculture as such is competitive, so that we can keep agriculture in Europe, because it is crucial for our safety and for our security. The Mercosur agreement, well, it's just the initial phase. The negotiations were completed by the European Commission, and now there are going to be a few months of very intensive legal work to translate everything into a draft that will be discussed among the member states. So I think that it will take longer than the first half of 2025. The Polish position is skeptical, but it's not just the position taken by Poland, it's the position taken by other member states as well. So I think that might mean problems for the Mercosur agreement. I have a few questions, can ask all of them at once, but about the presidency, and I've got some controversies. The strategy and the strategic dialogue for agriculture, ETS 2 and 3. What are our goals here, and what would we like to achieve as for the next multi-annual financial framework? And the summit in Warsaw is not going to take place. Why? That's all. Well, the first question you asked. It is our top priority to strengthen the competitiveness of the European Union, so we must not take any decisions that will reduce the competitiveness of the European Union. We can feel that the atmosphere is changing among the member states. I think that many member states will be open to discussing this issue, so that all the decisions which are going to be made make Europe more competitive, so that the development of the industry in the European Union is not reduced. As for the summits, according to the Treaty of Lisbon, there is just one person that can make the decision to organize a summit, and this is the President of the European Council. We are in touch with him, and there is going to be a summit in February in Brussels about defense policy, about security, on the 3rd of February, and it will be an opportunity for us to raise all the most important issues for us. And we should all care about making Europe more secure, safer in all different dimensions, the external dimension, the internal dimension, and so on. We've been talking about it for a long time, and Mr. Tusk had a meeting with the Baltic and Scandinavian states, and these are countries that take a very similar position to ours, and they think that security is number one priority, and it is our goal to make Europe speak our language so that everyone can agree with us at the end of the day that security is our top priority in the EU. Thank you, Kazimierz Łyszek, TVP World. Would it be okay for me to ask a question in English, and would you be able to answer in English? Today we want to keep speaking one of the official languages of the EU, which is Polish, and maybe at different conferences it will be possible to also speak English as well. So what will be the difference between the Polish presidency and the Hungarian presidency? You mentioned a lot of hopes regarding the Polish presidency. So what will be the difference, especially when we take into consideration that Hungary focused on security as well? And also, how effective is the Polish presidency going to be when it comes to Germany and France? Because there are political crises in Germany and in France. So how is Poland going to tackle these political crisis, major political crisis in France and Germany? The presidency is about being the presiding person in different councils and making everyone feel that we are going forward to solve problems. The Hungarian presidency started with something that was not in line with what had been agreed in Europe. Because Viktor Orban had some visits, international visits, which were a controversy. But I don't want to go into any details on this now. The Hungarian presidency took place in a time when the institutional cycle was changing. The European Commission was being formed, so their work was different than ours is going to be. And we are also aware that the Hungarian presidency had some problems talking to the European Parliament. We are very open for a dialogue. So we are open to talk to the member states, to the Commission, and to the European Parliament. And as for the political turmoil you asked about, we are just one of the member states of the EU, and in some EU member states there are going to be elections or there are going to be some problems, but the European Union must keep going forward, especially if there is some turmoil. We need to take responsibility, and we need to be very clear about it, and that's why there are such high hopes as regards the Polish presidency, because we should be open to lead the European Union forward. Katarzyna Pysta, Polsat News, Minister. Security 7 times, and the external security was on the top of the list, but you haven't really said much about that dimension so far today. So how much are we going to spend on defense? And another question, Mr. Tusk said earlier today the presidency is going to be responsible for shaping the negotiations which might start in winter this year, so we might be directly involved. in that process, and I would like to ask about that. What are we going to do in that regard? So the second question, this is a competence of the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister is our leader here, and he is responsible for leading these affairs, and he is going to be responsible for that. And as for the external security, to say a few more words about that. I mentioned that in the beginning. We want to make our defense industry stronger, and there is a discussion now on the EDIP program. So it's about providing financial support for the defense industry. We want to make that industry stronger so that we have supply chains within Europe. This is the first thing. Another one, we are working on the East Shield. This is an initiative taken by Poland and the Baltic states. And also there is another initiative. We should work together on the European Sky Shield to protect the European sky, so that external security is also about supporting Ukraine. The European Union has supported Ukraine for a long time. It was last year when a decision was made to provide 50 billion for Ukraine. There is the EPL program that we should strengthen as well. So it is about working with the US in that regard. So there are a lot of very specific projects that can be implemented in that area. And 2 weeks ago, I met the commissioner that has already taken the office, the Commissioner for Defense, and we talked about very specific issues during the first 100 days of the new European Commission. Commissioner Kubilius is going to prepare a white paper on defense issues. And there are two aspects related to that. We are going to talk about the multi-annual financial framework, and it is in our interest to make sure that defense expenditures are included in those. But these are going to start in 2027. And together with Commissioner Kubilius, we talked about providing some financial support for other options that might take place before 2027. But the new European Commission has just taken office, so right now it's too early to talk about more details, but we will keep monitoring that. Hello, Michał Dozkiewicz, Gazeta Wyborcza, Deutsche Welle. Minister, I'm going to continue some topics that have already been mentioned. Poland might be spending a lot of money on defense, but as for Germany, for example, they spend even less than 2% of the GDP, and there are political crises in two European countries, in Germany and in France, so maybe Poland will be like an island, the only member state calling upon all the other member states to increase the expenditures on defense. And another question which is related to the first one, it is also possible maybe that during the first half of 2025 the negotiations will start on what to do with the war in Ukraine. So how do you want to make sure that you will be at that negotiation table as Poland and as the EU presidency, if such negotiations on Ukraine should start within the first half of 2025? So a leader always says we, and a good student says just me, I. So we should talk about responsibility, and we should talk about what we can do together. Poland indeed is a country that spends much more on defense than it is obliged to do. But we are talking about NATO responsibilities. So our expenditure is 4.2 of our GDP on defense, and next year is going to be 4.7. When we talk to our partners in the European Union, it is a very, very strong card we can play to show our credibility. So we take this issue very seriously. And when there are meetings of the ministers or the prime minister, they can really impress the partners when they say that. And we can also see that the attitudes are changing in the other member states, and they are going to keep changing. Also because the US what the Americans are talking about that very clearly now. And we have a very similar position as for taking responsibility for our future. That's why we are talking about security. That's why we are talking about responsibility. We are saying security Europe to make everyone realize that the danger is real. So this is one strong card that we can play. Another one is that we have never been naive when it comes to the danger coming from Russia. And we have proposed a number of initiatives. Just to answer the previous question, as for the protection of the Baltic Sea, we are credible and our voice is heard. And the Commissioner and the budget of the EU, these are different elements. It is our task to moderate the discussions in the right way. That's what the Presidency is responsible for, the discussions about the multi-annual financial frames, so that everyone feels that responsibility, that there should be money provided in the EU budget to make sure that we strengthen our security and our defense potential.
Are there any other questions? Adam Kisiołek, TVP Info. I want to follow up on Section 4 about economic security. You mentioned that in Europe we have over-regulation, excessive prohibitions or orders from the European Union. What do you mean specifically when you say these words? Well, let me emphasize the following. The new European Commission has only just started working, so we are waiting for what the Commission will propose in the first 100 days, which will be the time of our presidency as well. But we've already talked to our European partners, and we've already talked to the Commission about it. It is our concern, and will be during our presidency and afterwards, that we remain competitive. Journalists tend to joke, saying that the US is the innovation leader, China the industrial production leader, and Europe is the regulation leader. This needs to change. We need a paradigm shift here, and all ideas that will come from the European Commission when they will be translated to work in the Council, presided by us, or when they go to the European Parliament, they should be addressed in a way that will focus on investment and intense incentives rather than regulations and prohibitions. Thank you very much. If I may, I'm sure you have more questions. But please follow us on social media. The social media profile of the presidency is starting. I'm sure many answers to your questions will be published there. Thank you very much.